Hey there, welcome to the Stream Home Edition. I'm Josh Rushing, sitting in for Femi, okay? Today, live from my home here in Fairfax, Virginia, and we have the most exciting show lined up for you today. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is audience engagement. Let's talk about the YouTube stream that we're going out right now. See that there? The box? There is a producer from the stream in that live conversation. So get your questions in there, your comments in there. They'll get them to me, and I'll get them to the panel during the show, and we can do this thing together, right? And just as a, I guess, a sign of good faith about how engaged we are with our audience, today's show is a topic that actually came via Twitter from Faisal Kermani. If we can go to my computer right now, he said, we asked, what do you guys want to see? And he said, yes, do cover Hajj 2020. How will it be this year for the Hajj pilgrimage? Well, Faisal, this one's for you, buddy. This is your show. Now, the Hajj. The Hajj is known as the largest human migration on earth. It's been going on for over 1,000 years in Saudi Arabia, Mecca, Medina. But this year's Hajj is going to be different than any ever because of COVID-19 and travel restrictions. Now, we have a great panel of guests to talk about this. I'm going to bring them in right now and ask them to introduce themselves to you. Joseph, can we begin with you?
Yeah, hi, my name is Joseph Lombard. I'm an associate professor of Quranic studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha.
Beautiful Doha, sure, of course. Shima, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Shima Khan. I'm a monthly columnist for the Globe and Mail, Canada's national newspaper, and I'm based in Ottawa, Canada.
All right. And our friends in Karachi, can you introduce yourselves, please?
Sure. I'm Shahryar Ashraf. I'm the CEO for Lebec VR, which is a full-scale 3D simulator for the Hajj and Umrah experience.
Hello, hi, I am Faisal Khwaja. I'm the founder and director for Lebec VR. This is primarily a training tool for pilgrims going for Hajj and Umrah.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here today. Joseph, because of COVID-19, how are they going to do the Hajj this year?
Well, my understanding from what I've read, and obviously I haven't been there, my understanding is that they are limiting the Hajj to those people who are already within Saudi Arabia, and so there will be a very limited amount of people who are able to go on Hajj. But what is important from a Muslim perspective is that the Hajj rites will continue, and this right, which is an obligation upon all Muslims, will be honored this year as best it can under the circumstances.
I want to bring up some voices from our community right off the top here. Here are a few people who were thinking about trying to go to Hajj this year in the near future and what it means that they won't be able to because of COVID.
So I had every intention of making Hajj this year, saving up money, thinking of the jobs that I had lined up, and then seeing how COVID-19 is affecting so much of the decision making in the world, and how financially it strikes a lot of us and has struck a lot of us and will strike a lot of us. I don't know when I'll be able to make Hajj, and that's a little, saddening. It's a little disheartening, but it also makes you understand that, we plan, but Allah is the best of planners. And that's what this time has taught me so much.
For me, it's just about thinking about, what can be more important than Hajj? What are we as a Muslim Ummah missing, or what are we not seeing? Or is there another duty that Allah has ordained for us that we are not completing, and therefore, we are not allowed to make Hajj this year?
I truly appreciate and support the bold decision taken by Saudi government to contain this COVID-19 pandemic. I wish and pray that things are much better next year and Hajj is performed as usual.
Shima, as I understand it, Hajj is about bringing people closer to God, but it's also, as you've written quite lovely, I will say, about bringing people closer to people. Can you tell us what we're missing out by there not being the normal Hajj this year?
Well, as you've mentioned, you have about 2.5 million people coming from all corners of the earth, speaking a diversity of languages, and even having different practices of the faith. but you're united, and you just see the diversity of humanity. Your mind and your heart broadens to how little you do know, and your perspectives change. I mean, one of the most famous transformations occurred some 55 years ago with Malcolm X, or Malik al-Shabazz, when he went, and his views on racism changed completely. He had never thought that whites and could be brothers, true brothers, and he witnessed true brotherhood in Mecca, and that changed his approach to race relations. And unfortunately, he was killed less than a year later.
We have a question from our audience, Ari. This is from Aisha Qureshi. How many times before has this pandemic or diseases affected the Hajj process? Joseph, do you know the answer to that? I know in the history of Saudi Arabia as a country, it's never been canceled, but I believe there was a pandemic in the 19th century that restricted it. But I don't know the details of that. Do you?
Yeah, there was some, actually, in the 19th century, there were cholera outbreaks a few times. There was one time when bubonic plague spread with some people coming from the subcontinent, and that compromised the Hajj. And there have been times before that, particularly in the 10th century, when the Hajj actually wasn't held for some 10 years in a row, but that was more due to political circumstances at the time. So it's probably about, overall, about 40 times that this has happened before, that in those times Hajj was actually suspended. And in this instance, there are people who are performing Hajj, but only that small group of people who are already within Saudi that are performing Hajj.
I think that question brings up kind of this interesting historical perspective of how Hajj has changed through the years and how technology has impacted that. Imagine what Hajj was before there were airplanes, right? And now there are airplanes you can get there in a matter of hours rather than days, weeks, or whatever. Well, now technology is continuing to change the Hajj, or impact it, or complement it maybe. And that's where our friends in Karachi come in. They're with a company called Labbaik, a startup. And guys, tell us what you've done.
So the Labbaik VR simulator is a full-scale 3D simulation of the Hajj and Umrah, the rituals, as well as the sacred spaces that are there in Mecca and Medina. You have to remember that a large number of pilgrims have never before been for Hajj. Some of them haven't even stepped on a plane before, and they save up their entire lives for this pilgrimage. And so we think that having a better, upgraded training tool as opposed to PowerPoints currently would be very useful for them to better be prepared for the rituals themselves, and and also to manage their expectations and to ultimately provide a better spiritual experience.
Okay, so we saw some of that there. I'm going to ask you to show us that and give us the full demo of that again. And I have a question for you before you do. Do you need one of these? This is my son's or one of my kids' VR helmet. Do you need one of these to experience this?
Yes, the VR version. So we have a version for the VR. So you need an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive for now. But very soon we're coming out with a mobile app. It's called Wuzu. And so hopefully you should be able to experience some of the same visuals and audio that we have right now with the VR version.
And for guys, I want you to understand this. When you put on this headset, you feel like you're in this world 360. When you turn and look this way, you're seeing what's there, and you turn and look this way, you see what's there, as well as with the sound. So it's really an immersive experience. Guys, can you show us the demo here outside the Grand Mosque in Mecca?
See, what you see on your screen is the external part of the Masjid al-Haram. And this is like replicated 100% exactly what it is over there. Even the buildings are not photographs. These are all 3D buildings. We can get into the lobbies of those buildings. This is the Grand Mosque, and the dimensions, the sizes, it's like 100% what you see over there. And the reason that we wanted it to be so accurate, because we wanted people to get the same experience, they get the same feeling once they get there. And imagine about 2 million people, they're going for Hajj, and they start asking questions. So this is one way of preparing them for the journey ahead. And these graphics and these VR, this is the recent technologies. So we worked long years and to come up with all that data that converted into that. So this is the entrance. Once you enter, it has the
All right, guys.
entire mosque, and which is like you go towards the
Let's hold off on
Kaaba,
the mosque for a minute. I want to make our viewers
yes.
stick around to see the mosque till the end of the show, see inside the mosque. Shima, are you seeing these images? I see you smiling there.
I
Yeah.
am.
What do you
I
think
am.
about this? Because you have you been there? Have you been to that spot that they were
I've
just
been
in?
there
You are
twice.
standing by.
Yes, I've been there
Twice?
twice. And well, I went for Hajj in 1995 and about 4 years ago for Umrah. And I remember the clock towers and the sumptuous buildings, but also the plaza to enter. It's quite remarkable what they've done. Thank you so much, Faisal and Shadia. It's beautiful. Thank you.
And I just heard him say this is to help people prepare to go. So this isn't to replace the Hajj, right? It's kind of to complement it. But this year, Shima, do you see this as being maybe helpful for all the people who maybe wanted to go and couldn't?
I think it's a great preparation. I think the real thing never can be replicated, but a 3D virtual tour is. I think it's almost the next best thing, and I would like to try it just to perhaps recollect fond memories.
Hey, Faisal and Sharir, how do people try this? How do people find this?
Well, you can. We are going to be putting this up on the Oculus store, so you can for the VR version. But very soon, within the next week, we're actually trying to get on the Play Store, so you can actually do it on your mobile devices, on your Android device if you have one.
And that's good because it's supposed to
download
start in about 3 days, right, Joseph? That's when the Hajj begins. So this will be ready for when people come out. Now, as I understand it, the Hajj is big money in Saudi Arabia. Is that right? That of their non-oil GDP, it's almost like 20%. Religious tourism is. What kind of hit do you think Saudi Arabia is taking this year by people not being able to go to the Hajj? And what's the impact of that, Joseph?
I mean, I've only read numbers on this. I'm not an economist, but the numbers that I've seen pertaining to Hajj itself are like 7%. And some people say that overall, the lack of pilgrimage this year is going to have a drastic impact on their economy. And then you combine that with depressed oil prices, and it's not a very good picture for Saudi Arabia, unfortunately. But hopefully this will come back. And I would actually imagine that one of the things that will happen is that next year, there will be a flood of people trying to go on the minor pilgrimage, on the Umrah, and they will have to restrict. I mean, they always have a problem with Hajj visas, but there will be many people trying to go on Hajj again next year, inshallah.
Yoshima, some people question Saudi's decision to shut it down, or at least that the decision should exist solely to the powers of Saudi Arabia rather than the larger Islamic world. In fact, we can go to my computer. I'm going to bring up an article here. It says, Mecca belongs to all Muslims, and Saudi Arabia shouldn't be allowed to run it. It's an incredible picture there with that as well. Shima, what do you think about the thoughts of that? Does Saudi have too much control over this thing that's so important for Muslims everywhere?
Well, practically speaking, they've had control. I mean, they're the ones who issue the visas for, that allow people to come into the country. So at a very practical level, they have control over who gets in and who gets out. And having said that, I think it would have been highly irresponsible to let the Hajj proceed as usual this year with the pandemic going on. We've had, for example, examples of religious gatherings which have served as super spreaders. And the Hajj, anyone who's been with 2.5 million people closely together, people of different ages, illnesses. I mean, so many people I was with had pneumonia towards the end of the Hajj. And that's without any pandemic. So I think it was the wise decision to restrict it. And again, it would have been highly irresponsible to have allowed it to occur as usual.
So
Yeah, I would
someone in our
agree.
community Go ahead, Joseph.
I was just going to say, I think she's absolutely right. I mean, they really didn't have a choice. And I actually think that the way that they've done it, the alternative which they've come up with of having a limited group of people, actually spiritually, this is the right thing to do, because there are hadith that say that, when less than 600 people doing the Hajj, that this will have repercussions for the world in a sense. And so this solution is very effective. And as to whether or not they have too much control, well, that's the nation state system. And so you really have to get into issues of state sovereignty there, and the way the nation state system is set up, that they've got it. And overall, while I might have problems with other things the Saudis have done, I don't think they've done a horrible job of running the Hajj and facilitating it for the Muslim world.
In our Twitter community, someone named Rindborn said, or at least has her Twitter handle, Rindborn, says it can never match the physical Hajj, but for the sake of rehearsal, I think it's a good app for the intending pilgrimages. I want to bring another voice from our community here. This is Moana Rahman, and she's the founder of something called the Hajj Game. You can see that at hajj-game.com. Let's hear what she has to say here.
I think that technology can really help here. Last year I created a board game. It takes the players to a pilgrimage to Mecca, and it brings people closer to each other. And this year we're bringing the game online so that people can still play, they can connect with their families and their friends, especially on Eid, and they can keep physical distance. And I think that it's key here to have tools that combine gamification, spirituality, and a very strong social component.
A strong social component. Shariar, is there a social component also to the VR experience that Labeik's put together?
Well, not now, but we do intend to have one in the future, yes.
Not now, but you do intend to have one where they might be able to connect with other users who are there in some way or communicate with them?
Absolutely. The connection with others is kind of central to Hajj. So we want to replicate that connection as best as we can in this digital world.
And do I understand it right that you guys really kind of pivoted to this consumer model? This started as a bit of a different project. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So we started as a training tool. And at the beginning of the COVID period in February, we decided to pivot to a consumer. We had the data, so we said, you know what, let's develop something that we can distribute free to all Muslims around the world right before Hajj, so they can actually see what the rituals look like and what the places look like. So yes, that was a pivot.
I've done some VR experiences. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Joseph, initially what we did, we designed it for to be played on almost like 100 feet screen. So because pilgrims, for training purposes, there are large audiences, they go for Hajj and Umrah. So initially we designed it to be run on a very large screen, like an IMAX size screen. So we spent a couple of years in R&D and all that. Later we switched it to the VR, and since now there's a pandemic out there, so everybody have mobile devices. So the real challenge that we had was how to bring all that details. We'll be showing you more along the show that, these imagery. So we brought it all to Android, and next, I think in about a week, 10 days, we will have an iOS version. So that is the plan for right now.
Here in the States, I've gone on two VR.
Here.
Oh, jump in, Joseph.
I was just going to say, when you're there in Mecca, it's confusing. When you're at the Kaaba and it's your first time, it's really confusing. You're like, wait, where's this? Oh, what, where's that? And you're turning into and then all of a sudden you find yourself somewhere. So this tool where you actually see these things beforehand, and then all of a sudden there's hundreds of thousands of people potentially around you at the same time while you're trying to figure it out. So I think this is actually really cool. But I think people have, as Shahryar and they've pointed out, there really is no replacement for it. And I mean, ultimately, the Hajj is a journey to God. And it's a journey away from yourself. Shabastari once said very well, he said that there are basically two steps in the Hajj. The first is a step away from yourself, and the second is a step towards God. And the beautiful thing about this virtual Hajj that they've done is that you can actually concentrate on those aspects of stepping away and outside of yourself and stepping towards God, and not having to sit there and say, wait, where's that? Well, where's that? Wait, where do I go?
Was there some
right.
low-tech version of this before that, I was unaware of that would prepare people for that journey?
It's called PowerPoint.
Yes. Can I just
Death by
add?
PowerPoint.
Can I just add
Sorry,
something?
one very
So go ahead.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. See, one very important aspect of it is imagine that almost 98% of the Muslim population will never be able to go for Hajj or Umrah. So that's huge, huge percentage. So this tool, this simulation, this immersion, that will give them an opportunity to actually visualize and be there. People, for those who cannot go there, even for non-Muslims, I mean, that is something. This will give them probably the spirituality of it, I mean, they can look and feel, because we spend a lot of time, almost 7-8 years, just to get the actual dimensions and the actual feel of it. Obviously, it can never be like a replica of it or an alternate to it. It can at least ease to some extent.
Shima, what did you want to say there?
Well, I just want to go back to about transformations, and there was a really interesting study, 2008, out of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and they studied the attitudes of pilgrims from Pakistan. In Pakistan, as in many countries, you have to apply for a visa through a lottery system. And they examined attitudes of those who applied but did not get the visa, and those who applied and did get the visa and performed the Hajj. And they compared attitudes about different social aspects. And one of the most striking features was that attitudes towards women had really changed for those who went for Hajj. There was more openness towards education and employment for women, and there was a greater appreciation for their for their attributes and for their contributions. Because in Hajj, you see women and men, sometimes you pray, the adhan comes and you have to sit down wherever you are and pray. And you could be beside a man or a woman. It's not segregated the way we're usually used to seeing. You see men and women working together. You see the spiritual women in front of you. And I thought that was really interesting, that people's attitudes towards Muslim women were changed during the Hajj. And I think this is something that we should be cognizant of, because it's not just Malcolm X and changing his views of racism, but of ordinary people changing their views towards their fellow Muslims. So I just wanted to bring that in as well.
Oh, thank you for
that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
You can look at
let's go and let's see inside the Grand Mosque now. Shahryar, if you'll take us in and show us Kaaba.
Okay. Sham, you're on. Okay. This is, we already entered into the mosque and we are moving towards the Kaaba area. So, yeah. So this is all the interior of it, and this is exactly what it is over there. Some of the parts, they are not even completed there, because as you all know, there is some construction going on over there. So we have been working with the people over there, and we see how it'll be completed and how
When
would
you
it look
first
like.
see the holy Kaaba, keep your eyes fixed on this, the holiest of all structures in Islam, standing to one side.
This can be in any number of languages we want.
Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Prepare for the Kaaba.
Can we get to the Kaaba? Just a few more seconds here. Wow.
Fantastic.
So this is what it would feel like to circumambulate.
Under the right arm and over
Jump main
the left
darwaza.
shoulder, thus leaving the right
All
shoulder.
right, guys, I got to pull out there.
Procedure
Wow.
called-
That's fascinating.
You read
All right,
that
look,
stone.
I have just a few seconds, and I want to thank Shima and Joseph and Faisal and Shahryar, everyone for coming on, and guys for showing us that incredible demo. We're in unique times now, COVID-19, and this could be a way that a lot of people could connect to something that maybe they wouldn't have gotten to otherwise. It's absolutely fascinating. I thank you, all for being here. And one more time, guys, where can people go and find that?
So the app is going to be on the Oculus Store for the Oculus Rift, as well as the Wuzu app is going to be on the Google Play Store this week.
Great, perfect.
And on the website.
This week. Just in time, because it starts around the 28th or 29th. All right. Well, thank you all. That's all the time we have. And until next time, be well.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Josh.
thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.